The morning light stretched long shadows over the hardwood floors of Jacob Miller's home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was an annual occasion not filled with joy but steeped in quiet reflection. A decade had passed, 10 years since his brother Nathan, Nathan's wife Hannah, and their 5 kids Ethan, Lucas, Emma, Grace, and little Lily disappeared, leaving only a brief note on their kitchen counter. Jacob shifted a wooden chair, part of the temporary setup that had replaced his usual living room decor. The preparations for the memorial had started at dawn. His cozy couch was gone, swapped for orderly rows of plain chairs facing the front. The coffee table now sat in the shed, clearing space for the crowd that would soon arrive. The service kicked off promptly at 8 o'clock, with members of their old order Amish community entering silently, men in dark suits and wide-brimmed hats, women in prayer caps and modest dresses. For 2 hours, they prayed, sang hymns in Pennsylvania Dutch, and shared stories of the Miller family. Preacher Thompson spoke movingly about holding faith through hardship, about trusting God's plan even when answers stayed out of reach. Now, with the mantel clock ticking past 10 o'clock, the formal gathering had wrapped up. Most attendees had left, heading back to their fields and chores. Only a tight-knit group remained, close relatives, trusted friends, and a few elders who'd known Nathan since he was a boy. Jacob scanned the smaller circle. His cousins, Benjamin and Sarah Fisher, sat side by side, Benjamin's beard now streaked with silver that wasn't there 10 years ago. Rachel Lapp, Hannah's dearest friend, wiped her eyes with a soft handkerchief. Old Caleb Yoder, whose land neighbored Nathan's deserted farm, gazed at his clasped hands. "Ready?" Jacob asked gently, nodding toward the kitchen table they'd moved to the center of the chairs. The group gathered close, forming a tight ring. On the table lay cherished keepsakes, photos, personal items, and, at the heart of it all, the note preserved in a clear plastic sleeve that had turned their world upside down. Jacob lifted the note carefully, though its words were etched in his memory. In Nathan's neat handwriting, it read, "Off for the weekend. Visiting kin for church business. Back Monday. No need to tend the livestock, neighbor boys will handle it. Nathan." "Each year we read this," Rachel said quietly. "And each year I can't help but wonder what church business could have pulled them away so fast." "And which kin?" Benjamin chimed in. "We're their kin." The community reached out to every relative, every contact in Ohio, Indiana, even Canada. No one had seen them. Sarah picked up a photo taken just days before they vanished. It captured the whole family on their front porch, Nathan, tall and bearded in his straw hat, Hannah beside him, cradling baby Lily, the other children lined up by height, all smiling in their plain clothes. Laundry swayed on the line behind them. "Such lovely kids," Sarah murmured. Ethan would be 23 now, Lucas 21, Emma 19, Grace 14, and little Lily, her voice cracked. Lily would be 10. Jacob opened a folder holding copies of the police reports. The official investigation had been short, limited by the community's hesitation to involve outsiders beyond the initial report. After a week of questioning neighbors and finding no evidence of wrongdoing, the case was labeled a voluntary disappearance and eventually shelved. "We did what seemed right," Caleb Yoder said, perhaps sensing Jacob's thoughts. "Our people don't rush to the English authorities with our troubles. We thought they'd come back. But they didn't," Sarah said softly. "So we gather every year, asking ourselves if we could have done more." Samuel Troyer, another community member, reached for a photo from the police file. He examined it closely, his brow creasing. It was the same porch photo Sarah had held, but this was the official copy, slightly sharper and larger. "Jacob," Samuel said deliberately, "your brother's family, they plan to head out that morning for the weekend, right?" "Yeah, that's what the note says," Jacob answered, puzzled. "What's your point?" Samuel held up the photo and pointed to the laundry line in the background. "Look at this fresh wash hanging out. Notice how the clothes are still damp at the edges? This was taken in the morning, like you said." "And?" Benjamin asked. "Why would Hannah wash clothes the morning they were leaving for 3 days?" Left out, the laundry would get ruined by rain, chewed by bugs, or bleached by the sun. No Amish woman would leave wet clothes hanging like that. The group leaned in, studying the photo with fresh eyes. Rachel let out a soft gasp. There, is that a vest? It looks too vivid to be our plain clothing. Jacob peered closer. Among the usual dark blues and blacks, something neon yellow-green stood out. His pulse quickened as he realized what it was. That's a police vest. Police? Sarah's voice sharpened with shock. Officer Daniels, Jacob said slowly, the memory surfacing. Mark Daniels. He was tight with Nathan, often helped our community, repaired fences, pitched in at barn raisings on his days off. A kind Englishman who respected our ways. I remember him, Caleb nodded. Always courteous, never pushed us toward modern ways. But why would his vest be in Hannah's laundry? Jacob examined the photo again. The vest was unmistakable now, the word police faintly visible on the bright fabric. I don't recall him ever getting it back, Jacob said. After Nathan vanished and the investigation fizzled out, Officer Daniels still stopped by now and then, checking on us, en masse. But I don't think he ever mentioned a vest. My Sarah Jane, God rest her soul, Jacob went on, speaking of his late wife, who'd passed 3 years earlier. She boxed up a lot of Nathan and Hannah's things when it was clear they weren't coming back. That vest might still be with their belongings. Sarah set the photo down, her hands shaking. Maybe we should talk to Officer Daniels about this. It might be nothing, but after 10 years, even a small clue could shed light. Ma, Jacob said gently, what could he do now? It's been a decade. The English police closed the case long ago. We chose not to push further, to accept God's will. But we've never truly found peace, Rachel cut in. We say we accept it, but we gather every year because we can't let go. Maybe God's will includes us searching for answers now. I'll track down the vest, Jacob resolved. At the very least, I should return it to Officer Daniels. It's the right thing to do. When I do, I'll bring up this laundry detail and see what he says. The group nodded in agreement. They spent another half-hour sifting through the remaining mementos, Nathan's favorite hymn book, Hannah's sewing thimble, the children's sketches, a rag doll that had been Emma's. Each item was passed gently, held with care, sparking a memory or a quiet prayer. As noon approached, the group began to leave. Each person hugged Jacob and Sarah, offering words of solace so familiar they felt polished by time. We'll see you at service on Sunday, Benjamin said, adjusting his black hat. Thanks for hosting this year, Sarah added. It means a lot to honor them in a home, not just the meeting house. It was Ma's idea, Jacob said, glancing at Sarah. She figured being here, in a place Nathan loved, might help us feel closer to figuring out what happened. One by one, the buggies rolled down the gravel path, leaving only Jacob and his mother behind. Sarah started collecting the photos and documents, her hands moving with slow, intentional care. I can help you move the furniture back, she offered. No, Ma, you rest? I'll drive you home and deal with this later. Jacob reached into the kitchen drawer, his fingers brushing the familiar weight of 2 brass keys on a plain ring, one for Nathan's house, another for the old farmhouse on the separate plot Nathan had owned. They felt cool and heavy, untouched for months. They walked to his buggy, but Jacob opted for his car, a rare allowance their Ordnung permitted for his carpentry business. He helped Sarah climb in, his chest tight with the burden of another year without answers. As they drove the short distance to Sarah's modest, dotty house on the family land, the image of that police vest dangling among Hannah's laundry lingered in his mind, a jarring, out-of-place detail from what should have been a routine morning 10 years ago. After settling his mother at her cozy home, Jacob decided to head straight to Nathan's place. The drive along quiet country roads took just 10 minutes. He'd been avoiding the property lately. Its emptiness always stirred up a tangle of painful feelings. Pulling into the overgrown driveway, he noticed the oak tree Nathan had planted a year before vanishing now loomed over the porch, its branches scratching the roof. The key stuck in the lock but finally turned. Inside, the air was thick with dust and stillness. Faded patches on the walls marked where family photos once hung. Sarah Jane had packed away most of the personal items after the first year, when hope of their return began to wane. Jacob began his search in the obvious spots. The hall closet held only mouse tracks and a couple of bent hangers. The pantry off the kitchen, once stocked with Hannah's canning jars, stood bare except for cobwebbed shelves. He climbed the creaky staircase, each step groaning under his weight. The master bedroom door was slightly open. The bed frame stood empty, its mattress long gone, but at the foot of the bed sat a familiar wooden chest. Kneeling beside it, Jacob lifted the lid, the hinges squeaking but holding firm. Inside, Sarah Jane had neatly stored items too precious to throw out but too heavy to keep in sight. A work shirt, still shaped by Nathan's broad shoulders. A wooden toy wagon, smoothed by little hands. And there, folded carefully on top, the neon police vest. He picked it up gently. Police blazed across the back in reflective letters, and a small patch on the front read, M. Daniels in tidy stitching. The vest was spotless, meticulously cleaned by Hannah a decade ago. Jacob shut the chest softly and stood, vest in hand. He pulled out his cell phone, another business necessity, and scrolled to Officer Daniels' personal number, saved years ago after Daniels helped with some shop vandalism. The phone rang 4 times before hitting voicemail. Daniels' familiar voice prompted a message. Jacob hung up, leaving a voicemail about this felt off. He thought about calling the police station but paused. The Amish kept a polite but cautious distance from English authorities. The idea of navigating a phone system, explaining to a stranger, maybe getting shuffled around, no, this needed a face-to-face talk, the way they handled things. Tucking the vest under his arm, Jacob headed downstairs. He locked the house and started for his car, then stopped. A memory tugged at him, a conversation with Nathan years before he vanished. Nathan had mentioned developers hounding him, wanting to buy his land for some vague project. Jacob walked around to the back of the house, curious if those plans had ever taken shape. From the back porch, the view was unchanged. Rolling farmland stretched to the horizon. Whatever development was pitched, it never happened. The same wooden fences marked the boundaries. The same cluster of maple trees stood guard at the edge of Nathan's old land. 10 years, and it looked frozen in time. Jacob returned to his car, placing the vest carefully on the passenger seat. He made a mental note to visit the farmhouse. The properties couldn't stay neglected forever. The Lancaster police station was a simple brick building on the town's edge, its flag fluttering in the afternoon breeze. Jacob parked neatly and walked through the glass doors, the vest under his arm. The lobby smelled of brewed coffee and polished floors, and a young officer sat at the front desk. "Good afternoon," Jacob said, stepping up. "I'm looking for Officer Mark Daniels. Is he around?" The officer, whose nameplate read Carter, glanced up from his monitor. "Daniels? He's been out on patrol since noon. Can I assist you or pass along a message?" Jacob adjusted the vest in his hands. "It's personal. I've got something of his from a long time back. Any idea when he'll return?" Carter shrugged. "Tough to pin down with field work. Could be an hour, could be end of shift. I can take your info and have him call you." "No, thanks," Jacob said. "I'd rather handle this in person. I'll try again later." "Up to you," Carter said, eyes already back on his screen. "He's usually here in the mornings if you want to swing by tomorrow." Jacob nodded and left the station. In his car, he sat for a moment, weighing his next move. The farmhouse still needed checking, and he was already nearby. He could try the station again later or come back in the morning. He drove out of town, following the winding road to the rural plots. Nathan's farmhouse sat on 40 acres of fertile land, separate from the main house, about 15 minutes deeper into the countryside. Halfway there, passing a stretch of Amish farms, he spotted trouble at the Thompson property. Two men in dark uniforms stood by a black truck, and Ezra Thompson was stepping back from them, hands raised defensively. Jacob pulled over and got out. As he approached, he caught their raised voices. "I told you yesterday and the day before," Ezra said in his accented English. "This land isn't for sale. It's been ours for generations." "Things change, Mr. Thompson," one of the uniformed men replied. His uniform was odd dark, maybe navy, but without patches, badge numbers, or any identifiers. "Our offer's more than fair. You could buy new land, better land." "No land is better than what God entrusted to us," Ezra said firmly. "Please leave my property." The second man stepped closer, his stance aggressive. "You Amish think you can just hoard prime real estate forever, adding nothing to progress or the economy? Is something wrong here?" Jacob called, quickening his pace. All three turned. Ezra's face softened with relief at the sight of a friend. The two uniformed men exchanged looks. "No issue," the first man said slickly. "Just talking business." "Doesn't seem like Mr. Thompson wants your business," Jacob said, standing beside Ezra. "He's asked you to go." The second man's jaw clenched. "And who are you?" "A neighbor, and someone who'll call the police if you don't respect his request to leave." Jacob held up his phone, making it visible. The men glanced at each other. The first one pulled a business card from his pocket and flicked it onto the ground at Ezra's feet. "Think about our offer, Mr. Thompson. We'll be back." They sauntered to their truck with slow, deliberate steps, as if to prove they weren't rattled. Jacob noted the license plate as they drove off, the truck plain with no logos or markings. "Thank you, Jacob," Ezra said when they were gone, stooping to retrieve the card. "They've been here every day this week, always pushing to buy my land, getting bolder each time." "What do they want it for?" Jacob asked. Ezra shrugged. "They talk about development, progress, better use of the land, but they're vague." He paused, his face clouding. "You know, something similar happened before about 10 years back. Different men, but the same kind of pressure, same hazy talk of projects. Then it just stopped." Jacob felt a prickle of unease in the warm afternoon air. 10 years ago? Around when my brother disappeared. Yes, now that you say it, maybe a few months before. Nathan had men bothering him too. I recall he was troubled, spoke to the bishop about it. Ezra hesitated, avoiding mention of the disappearance. "These men," Jacob said, "did they say who they work for?" Ezra handed him the card. It was plain white, with just a phone number and Land Development Associates in stark black text. No names, no address. "I'm actually headed to talk with Officer Daniels about something else," Jacob said. "I'll bring this up with him. He's always been a friend to our people. Maybe he can check if these guys have any right to bother you like this." "That'd be a help," Ezra replied. "I'm not sure the English laws can do much if they're just asking to buy, but it'd be good for the police to know what's going on." Jacob glanced down the road where the truck had vanished. "Watch yourself, Ezra. Maybe don't face them alone next time. Keep your boys or neighbors close by." "I will. Thanks again, Jacob. God bless you." Jacob returned to his car, unsettled by the encounter. As he drove toward Nathan's farmhouse, A nagging sense grew that the past was waking up, old mysteries clawing their way to the surface. The entrance to Nathan's farmhouse was framed by two time-worn stone pillars standing for over a century. As Jacob slowed to turn in, he spotted a police cruiser parked across the road, its engine humming softly. Through the open driver's window, he saw a familiar figure in sunglasses, Officer Mark Daniels. Jacob pulled over, parked, and crossed the quiet lane. As he neared, Daniels slid off his sunglasses, revealing weary eyes that warmed with recognition. "Jacob Miller," Daniels said kindly. "Good to see you. How you holding up?" "Hello, Officer Daniels. I'm doing all right, thanks." Jacob glanced at the empty road. "You stationed out here today? Seems odd for someone with your experience to be on routine patrol." Daniels gave a small laugh. "Just keeping tabs on the area. Was driving by and saw Nathan's old place." His face grew serious. "Hard to believe it's been a decade. That case still crosses my mind now and then." "I appreciate you remembering," Jacob said, touched by the thought. "Actually, I stopped by the station earlier looking for you. There's something about Nathan's case I wanted to talk about." "Oh." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Yeah, I found something of yours at Nathan's house." Jacob went back to his car and grabbed the vest. "This was in a chest with their things. I think it belongs to you." Daniels took the vest, looking puzzled as he turned it over. "A vest? I don't." He spotted his name stitched on the patch, and his expression cleared. "Right, this is mine. Slipped my mind completely after all these years." "How'd it end up at my brother's place?" Jacob asked. Daniels passed the vest back through the window, scratching his chin. "It was that morning, the day they left. I'd stopped by to talk with Nathan about something, and Hannah, being the warm person she was, insisted I stay for breakfast. Wouldn't hear otherwise? You know how she was." Jacob nodded, recalling Hannah's generous spirit. "Well, I'm clumsy as they come," Daniels went on. "Spilled tomato soup all over my vest. Hannah wouldn't let it sit, said the stain would set if she didn't wash it right away. I tried to argue, but Daniels shrugged. You didn't win arguments with Hannah Miller when she wanted to help." "I never heard about you being there," Jacob said slowly. "What were you and Nathan talking about that morning?" A shadow crossed Daniel's face, hesitation. "Maybe? It's been so long. I think it was about community safety. There were some development plans stirring up concern around here." "Development plans?" Jacob leaned in. "Nathan mentioned something about that once. Private companies wanting to put a road through the back of his land." "Exactly," Daniels said, seeming to ease up. "A company was pushing hard to buy up properties for some big project. The community was uneasy, and we worked with local officials to pause the plans. I was likely checking in with Nathan to see if anyone was leaning on him too hard." Jacob thought of Ezra Thompson's shaken expression from earlier. "Speaking of pressure, I just came from Ezra Thompson's farm. Two men in dark uniforms were there, trying to bully him into selling his land. They've been at it all week." Daniel's face tightened. "Dark uniforms? No company logos or badges?" "Nothing I could make out. They backed off when I said I'd call the police, but they warned they'd return." Jacob pulled out the business card. "They left this, Land Development Associates, but it's just a phone number." Daniels took the card, gave it a quick look, and handed it back. "I'll dig into it, visit Ezra myself. We can't have folks harassing our Amish neighbors." "I'd be grateful," Jacob said. "The community trusts you, Officer Daniels. You've always treated us well." Daniels started to reply, but his eyes flicked past Jacob, locking onto something down the road. His posture shifted, suddenly sharp and focused. Jacob turned and saw a black truck approaching from town, the same one from Ezra's farm. "Listen, Jacob," Daniels said swiftly, starting his engine. "I'll follow up on this for sure. I'll talk to Ezra, and we should sit down about your brother's case. There might be threads worth pulling, but I've got a meeting I can't miss right now." "Of course," Jacob said, stepping back. "Thanks for your time." "Thanks for bringing the vest," Daniels called as he pulled onto the road. "Stay safe, Jacob." Jacob watched the cruiser tail the black truck at a careful distance. It seemed Daniels was already on the case with those men. Knowing the officer was taking it seriously eased Jacob's mind. He drove through the farmhouse gates, the gravel drive now more weeds than stone. The farmhouse stood weary, its white paint flaking, shutters sagging. The for sale sign he'd put up 5 years after Nathan vanished tilted to one side, faded by weather. In 5 years, only a few curious buyers had inquired, none serious enough to make an offer. The property was still stunning despite its neglect, 40 acres of rich farmland with a solid barn and the 2-story home Nathan had cared for so diligently. But the Amish community was tight-knit, and English buyers often hesitated to purchase land deep in plain country. Meanwhile, most Amish families had their own plots or couldn't afford the price. Jacob parked and unlocked the house. Dust swirled in the afternoon light filtering through grimy windows. He found cleaning supplies in the pantry, still usable, and set to work tidying the kitchen. He was sweeping up mouse droppings when he heard a car crunch into the driveway. Through the window, he saw an unfamiliar sedan. A man in a suit stepped out, glanced at the for sale sign, and headed for the house. Jacob met him at the door. "Good afternoon," the man said with a polished smile. "I saw the for sale sign. Is this place still on the market?" "Yes, it is," Jacob said. "I'm the owner or managing it for the family." "Great. I'm very interested. Mind if I take a look?" Jacob waved him inside. "Go ahead, but fair warning, it needs work. It's been empty for years." The man moved through the rooms with quick, calculating eyes, less focused on the house's state than on something else. He kept peering out windows, checking views, nodding to himself. "What's your asking price?" he asked at last. Jacob gave the figure he'd set 5 years ago, a fair value for the land and buildings. The man chuckled. "For this shape? I'll offer half that." "That's far below the land's worth alone," Jacob countered. "It's out in the sticks, surrounded by Amish farms. Limited potential for development. Half your price is more than fair." Jacob felt torn. The offer was low, but the property had sat empty so long. Each month brought more decay, more costs. "I could drop 15%, but..." "I'll split the difference," the man cut in, pulling a map from his jacket. "Let me show you what I've got in mind for the place." He unfolded the map on the dusty kitchen counter. Jacob saw the farmhouse property outlined in red with development notes, but his eye caught another marking, a circled area in the northern mountains, dotted with symbols he didn't recognize. "What's that?" Jacob asked, pointing to the mountain area. The man glanced at the spot and quickly folded the map to hide it. "Nothing to do with this property." "Now, about the farmhouse, I'm thinking of turning it into a rustic getaway, maybe a bed and breakfast for tourists curious about Amish country." The man kept talking, but Jacob's mind snagged on that fleeting glimpse of the mountain marking. Something about it tugged at his memory, though he couldn't pin it down. After some back and forth, they agreed on a price lower than Jacob wanted but better than the man's initial lowball offer. It would cover the outstanding taxes and leave a little for his mother. "Perfect," the man said, handing over a business card. "Come to my office and we'll get the papers sorted. Can you follow me now? I'd like to wrap this up fast." Jacob paused. The haste felt off, but he'd been trying to sell for 5 years. "All right, show me the way." He locked the farmhouse and slid into his car, trailing the sedan along the rural road. The office building appeared abruptly around a curve, its sleek glass and steel clashing with the rolling fields. It stood alone in what used to be a wheat field, circled by an oversized parking lot that seemed unnecessary for such a remote spot. Jacob parked next to the sedan. "Quite a place," he said as they approached the entrance, though he found the building stark and uninviting. "We like to make an impression," the man replied, holding the door. "A sharp setting for serious business." Inside, the space gleamed with polished floors and sparse furniture. At the reception desk sat a woman in a dark uniform, and Jacob's stomach twisted. She wore the same style as the men who'd hassled Ezra Thompson, no logos or patches. "This is Mr. Miller," the buyer said to her. "He needs to register as a visitor." "Of course," she replied, pushing a form across the desk. I'll need your license and your signature here, here, and here. The buyer glanced at his watch. I'll go prep the contracts. My office is down the hall when you're done. He walked off, leaving Jacob with the receptionist. Jacob fished out his license, feeling out of place with such formalities. In his world, agreements were sealed with a handshake and good faith. As the woman entered his details into her computer, a flash of movement outside caught his eye. Through the wide window overlooking the lot, he saw the black truck from earlier pulling in. Behind it, Officer Daniel's cruiser followed at a distance, but both vehicles passed the building, heading up the mountain road that wound behind the property. "Ma'am," Jacob said, "what's up that mountain road?" She barely looked up from her typing. "No idea. You'd have to ask Mr. Harrison about that." "Mr. Harrison? That's the man buying my property?" "Yes." She focused back on her screen, clearly done talking. While waiting for her to finish, Jacob drifted toward a display near the windows. A detailed architectural model sat under glass, mapping out development plans. He leaned in, instantly recognizing the landscape. There was the mountain. There was the valley where his Amish community had thrived for generations. There were the familiar winding roads he'd traveled his whole life. But the model showed a different world. Where Amish farms now stood, it depicted office buildings, housing tracts, and strip malls. His home, his mother's place, Nathan's properties, Ezra Thompson's farm, all erased, replaced by modern structures. New roads sliced through untouched land. Only one spot stayed undeveloped, a patch on the mountain marked with what looked like a church or memorial. Jacob read the small sign beside it, Amish Heritage Memorial, honoring the legacy of Pennsylvania's plain folk. Legacy, not their living presence. Legacy as if they were already history. A chill ran through him as he realized the mountain spot matched the marking on the buyer's map. He glanced out the window again, where dust from the vehicles still hung in the air. Was that where Daniels was headed? "Sir, I need your signatures," the receptionist said. "Actually," Jacob said, edging toward the exit, "I just remembered something urgent. Please let Mr. Harrison know I'll need to reschedule." Her eyes narrowed. "He's waiting. The contracts are ready. I'll be back later today, tomorrow at the latest." "Sorry. Sir, Mr. Harrison doesn't like delays." But Jacob was already pushing through the door. He heard her grab the phone, speaking quickly to someone as he jogged to his car. He started the engine and peeled out of the lot. The mountain road was rough, built for logging trucks and utility vehicles, not everyday cars. Jacob's sedan jolted over ruts and gravel as he climbed. Afternoon sunlight flickered through the trees, flashing across his windshield. He wasn't sure what he'd find, but every gut instinct screamed to follow that road. The model's memorial, the renewed land pressure, Daniel's odd behavior, the echoes of 10 years ago, it all churned in his head, fragments of a mystery that wouldn't snap into place. The road grew steeper and more remote with each mile. Jacob's car labored up the incline, forcing him to downshift twice to keep moving. Trees closed in, their branches weaving a green canopy overhead. For nearly an hour, he drove, passing no other vehicles, seeing no signs of life except the occasional power pole along the route. At last, the road opened into a cleared area. Through sparse trees, Jacob spotted Daniel's cruiser parked near a construction fence. He pulled into a small turnout, half hidden by shrubs, cut the engine, and stepped into the crisp mountain air. The construction site was vast, bigger than he'd imagined. Idle equipment loomed, a bulldozer, an excavator, piles of timber and stone. The structure rising here mimicked an Amish meeting house but was showier, with ornate peaks and flourishes no plain community would ever use. It was a tourist's version of Amish life, all surface and no soul. Jacob crept closer, sticking to the tree line. Through the chain-link fence, he saw Daniels standing with the two men from Ezra Thompson's farm. Their voices drifted on the breeze. "The memorial house will be a hit," one of the men said. "It'll showcase the legacy of Amish life in this area. Tourists eat up that nostalgic stuff. They'll flock here to experience real Amish heritage." "It's a compelling story," the other chimed in. How the quaint Amish lifestyle couldn't withstand modern demands. Heartbreaking. Profitable. Daniels nodded. Once the last families are persuaded to move, the project can roll forward. How long until It's a slow burn, the first man cut in. We've waited a decade already. A bit more time won't hurt. But with your support, officer, we can push harder this round. These stubborn Amish, the second man said, shaking his head. They don't get progress, don't see the value in our offer. Sometimes I think the only way to handle them is, he paused, glancing around as if sensing eavesdroppers, then chuckled. Let's just say this ground is built on Amish bones. Literally. We've got them stored right here. Jacob's stomach churned. He edged closer to the fence, straining to catch every word. Come, the first man said to Daniels. We've got something to show you. They moved deeper into the construction site. Jacob's eyes scanned the area, landing on a hard hat and safety vest draped over a fence post likely left by a worker on break. Acting on impulse, he grabbed them, slipped them on, and ducked through a gap in the fence. The vest hung loose, the hat wobbled on his head, but from afar, he might blend in as a worker. Keeping his head low, he walked with purpose, trailing the group at a safe distance. They stopped at the far end of the half-built structure where the foundation was set but walls were only partially up. One of the men waved over a worker running a small backhoe. Dig here, he ordered, pointing to a spot marked with orange paint. Not too deep, about 3 feet. The worker looked puzzled but followed orders. The backhoe's bucket clawed into the dirt, scooping away earth and stones. After a few passes, the operator paused, leaning forward to inspect something. That's enough, the first man said. He and his partner climbed into the shallow pit. Jacob crept nearer, hiding behind a pile of lumber. His heart pounded as one of the men reached into the dirt and pulled out a bone, clearly human, likely a femur. The man passed it to Daniels, who took it without flinching, turned it over in his hands, then tossed it back into the hole. See, the second man said with a smirk. We kept them here, the whole family plus a few others who poked around too much over the years. There'll be more down the line, the first added. Once we clear out the remaining Amish, kill some if we have to, scare the rest off, this valley's ours for the taking. Malls, subdivisions, tourist traps, something useful, not just fields wasting away with backward folks. And you'll help us, right, officer? He said to Daniels. Like you did before. Your role, your trust in the community, priceless. Daniels gave a slow nod. The department relies on me for Amish matters. They won't second-guess my reports. Jacob retreated, his body trembling. Nathan, Hannah, the kids buried here, beneath this twisted tribute to their memory. He forced himself to move silently back to the fence where he ditched the hat and vest where he'd found them. He sprinted to his car, started it, and sped down the mountain as fast as he dared. His phone had no signal at the site, but halfway down, 2 bars appeared. He pulled over, hands shaking as he dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? I'm Jacob Miller, he said, steadying his voice. I need to report murders, multiple murders, and police corruption. Sir, please stay calm. Where are you? Jacob gave the road markers he'd memorized. There's a construction site at the top. They're building a fake Amish memorial. I just saw them dig up human bones. Officer Mark Daniels is involved. He's corrupt. He's working with developers who killed my brother's family 10 years ago. Sir, these are grave accusations. Are you sure? I saw the bones, Jacob said, his voice breaking. I heard them talk about killing more Amish. Please, send someone. Dig where they dug. You'll find proof. We're sending units now, sir. State police will be involved due to the corruption claim. Stay where you are. Jacob waited, engine idling, eyes on the road. Within 15 minutes, sirens wailed. Several police cars roared past, heading up the mountain. He followed them back. At the site, chaos unfolded. Officers flooded the area. Daniels stepped out of the building, saw the police cars, and his face drained of color. As the two developers made for their truck, Jacob swung his car in front of them, blocking their path. Daniels approached, trying to project authority. "Jacob, what's this? Move your car." "I saw it all," Jacob said, stepping out. "The bones, my brother's family, maybe others. You helped kill them." "This is absurd," Daniels said. "Officers, this man's making baseless claims." But the arriving police were already in motion. A Sergeant Jacob didn't know said, "Officer Daniels, step aside while we investigate. These are serious allegations." "It's a misunderstanding," Daniels insisted. "This man's grieving, seeing things that aren't there." "Then you won't mind us taking a look?" the sergeant replied. Officers swarmed the site. Workers stood back, bewildered. "There," Jacob pointed to the pit. "They dug there. The bones are in that spot." Two officers climbed into the hole. Moments later, one shouted, "Sergeant, we've got human remains." Daniels bolted. A sharp crack rang out, a warning shot into the air. "Nobody move!" an officer yelled. Daniels froze. The developers, halfway to their truck, stopped too. Officers closed in, guns drawn but lowered. "Hands behind your heads, on your knees." One by one, Daniels and the two men were cuffed. Daniels' face was a mask of resignation as he was led to a cruiser. The developers protested, claiming innocence, demanding attorneys, but the officers remained calm and firm. "We need to hit their office," Jacob told the sergeant. "The guy trying to buy my farm, Harrison, he's in on it. He's at the office building at the mountain's base." The sergeant nodded. "We'll handle it. You'll need to come to the station for a full statement." The police convoy wound down the mountain, lights flashing but sirens off. At the sleek office building, more cruisers pulled up. Officers stormed inside while Jacob waited outside. Through the glass, he saw Harrison being cuffed, the receptionist's stunned expression, and stacks of documents being seized. As they prepared to head to the station, Jacob glanced back at the mountain. Somewhere up there, hidden for a decade, his family rested in unconsecrated earth. But they'd been found. At last, they'd been found. The Lancaster police station buzzed with activity. Through the Sally Port windows, Jacob watched Daniels being led inside, his uniform now a betrayal of the trust it once symbolized. The developers followed, their earlier swagger replaced by grim silence. Harrison came last, still in his suit, his face ashen. A detective in a navy blazer approached. "Mr. Miller, I'm Detective Emily Wong with the State Police. We're taking over due to the circumstances. Can you come with me?" She led him to a plain interview room with a table, chairs, and a recorder. "I know this has been a lot," Detective Wong said softly, "but I need you to walk me through everything from the start. Take your time." Jacob began with the morning's memorial, his voice steady as he described noticing the vest in the photo, finding it at Nathan's house and trying to return it to Daniels. He recounted the incident at Ezra Thompson's farm, the odd roadside meeting with Daniels, the rushed property sale, and finally the horrors he'd witnessed at the mountain site. Wong jotted notes, asking for details when needed. When Jacob finished, she set her pen down. "Can you tell me about the investigation 10 years ago?" Jacob shifted, uneasy. "It was short, barely a week. Daniels ran it, said he was the point person for Amish issues. He asked around, checked the house, but he chose his words carefully. We Amish don't easily work with outside authorities. It's not our way." Most thought Nathan and his family left on their own, maybe to visit kin, maybe to start fresh elsewhere. When they didn't come back, we figured there was some private reason, some conflict we didn't know. Did your brother ever talk about leaving? No, though he did mention pressure from a land company. They wanted his property. Nathan owned more land than most of us, not that we rank ourselves, but he'd inherited from our dad and bought extra over the years. He was a big landowner. Wong nodded. We found something at Harrison's office you might want to know about, a ledger, detailed records of their scheme, including notes on Daniels. Jacob leaned forward. Daniels was involved? More than involved. From what we've read, he orchestrated the kidnapping. He used his role, his trust in your community, to get close to your brother. The ledger says Daniels was on their payroll for years, tipping them off about which families might sell or were easy targets. Jacob felt ill. All those times Daniels helped at barn raisings, guided traffic during harvests, showed respect for their ways, it was all a facade. The officer we relied on, he said quietly. He ate at our homes, knew our kids' names. I'm so sorry, Wong said. This is a profound betrayal. Do you know what happened to my brother's family? We'll learn more after interrogations, but from the ledger and evidence, we think they were lured to a remote spot, likely the mountain site, where construction wouldn't start for years. Your brother probably rejected their final offer. Things got heated and they silenced the whole family, Jacob said, finishing the thought. The kids too, to leave no loose ends. That's our theory. DNA will confirm if the remains are your family, but since yours is the only Amish disappearance in this area in a decade, it's likely. Did they ever get any land? Was it worth it? Wong checked her notes. No records show sales to their company. After your brother's disappearance, they backed off, maybe scared of scrutiny. All those deaths for nothing. They waited 10 years to try again. Jacob dropped his head into his hands. Nathan fought them and we didn't know. If I'd been here, I was in Indiana then, apprenticing. I came back after they vanished. If I'd known about his battle with these developers. You can't carry the guilt, Wong said firmly. The blame is on the men who did this. We Amish live by surrender, Jacob said, lifting his head. We trust God's will, avoid clashing with the world. But sometimes that blinds us to evil. We should have pushed harder 10 years ago, demanded real answers instead of trusting Daniels. A knock came at the door. An officer leaned in. Detective, the family members here, Mrs. Sarah Miller. My mother, Jacob said, rising quickly. He found her in the hallway, her bonnet slightly crooked, her face etched with dread and hope. Their eyes locked, and she saw the truth in his gaze. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Jacob steadied her as she faltered. They're just bones now, Ma. Just bones. They clung to each other in the harsh fluorescent light, mother and son bound by a grief a decade old yet freshly raw. Officers passed quietly, giving them space. After a while, Detective Wong approached. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, the forensics team has initial findings if you're ready. They were led to a softer waiting room with cushioned chairs and tissue boxes scattered around. A woman in a lab coat entered, her face calm but kind. I'm Dr. Lopez from forensics, she said. The remains are about 10 years old. From soil and decomposition, we found bones of different sizes, adult male, adult female, and children of various ages. Sarah let out a pained sound. Jacob squeezed her hand. We'll need DNA from both of you to confirm identities, Dr. Lopez continued. But the ages and number align with your missing family. Can we see them? Sarah asked, her voice faint. Dr. Lopez hesitated. They're not whole remains, Mrs. Miller. But if it would help, we can show you some of the evidence. They were taken to a sterile room where evidence bags rested on a metal table, cleaned and labeled bones, scraps of cloth, a tiny shoe that might have fit a young child, personal items that endured a decade underground. Sarah, hands trembling, pulled the photo from her bag, the one from the memorial. Nathan and Hannah on the porch, the 5 kids lined up by height, all smiling in the sunlight of a morning 10 years past. She held it up, matching the vibrant faces to the fragments before her. "It's them," Sarah whispered. "My son, my grandchildren." They stood in the cold room, staring at the remnants of a family that had laughed, prayed, and toiled together. Jacob thought of the years of wondering, of hope fading to resignation, of questions that seemed doomed to linger forever. Now they knew. The truth was brutal, but it also brought a strange relief. No more doubts about whether Nathan chose to leave, whether they'd failed him, whether the family was living elsewhere. They were here. They'd never left. "We'll give them a proper burial," Jacob said softly. "In the cemetery with our people. They'll come home." Sarah nodded, tears tracing her lined face. She touched the photo once more, then tucked it carefully back into her bag. They'd found Nathan's family at last, and though the discovery brought sorrow, it also marked the start of healing.